you choose.
I hope you all enjoyed your lunch. We'll take a poll afterwards because I'm officially lobbying for us to do all of our events with butter chicken at them moving forward. So please fill out your comment cards. I'd also like to officially welcome our online audience who's joined us now. We've had a great lineup of events this year. We're just closing out our season. We run September to June. We've had dozens of speakers at our podium, and we've welcomed an audience of nearly 10,000 Canadians this season alone. Yesterday, we heard from the CEO of TELUS, last week, the CEO of Scotiabank, and we had a panel of Indigenous professionals that spoke about how reconciliation is progressing on Bay Street. On Monday, we'll have our annual Pride event. You can find more information about all of our past events and the recordings of them, as well as our future events at the Canadian Club's website, canadianclub.org. And now for the main event. After his speech, Minister O'Regan will be joined by Tanya Van Biesen, the incoming president of the Canadian Club, for a fireside chat. This club has been Canada's podium since 1897 because we encourage engagement and inquiry from our audiences and our members, and we want to hear from you. On the question cards on your table, everyone should be able to locate those on their table somewhere, as well as a pen. You can write down your questions for the minister, and I assure you, Tanya will press him on each of them. And someone will come around and collect them throughout the speech. To kick us off and to welcome the minister, I'm going to call on Liv Mendelson, Executive Director, Canadian Centre for Caregiving Excellence. Welcome, Liv.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Minister, colleagues and friends. I am so pleased to get to kick off this exciting conversation about caregiving and Canada's care economy with the Honourable Seamus O'Regan. Since our inception 2 years ago, the Canadian Centre for Caregiving Excellence has been guided by our firm belief that caregiving is the next frontier of public policy in Canada. We are a nation of caregivers. There are more than 8 million caregivers in Canada. 1 in 4 Canadians is currently a caregiver, and half of all Canadian women are caregivers today. Caregivers are the under-recognized backbone of our health and social care systems. We provide 3 hours of care in homes and in communities for every hour of care provided through our healthcare systems. Caregiving is my story too. I've been a caregiver since I was 10 years old, when my grandmother Myra lived with us. She first cared for me, and then I cared for her during her dementia journey. I've also cared for my mother through palliative cancer, and I'm currently caring for my dad. And my experience probably resonates with many of you in this room. Some of you will likely have never thought of yourselves as a caregiver, just a daughter, a son, a partner, a friend, doing what needs to be done. Caregiving is meaningful and rewarding, but caregiving in Canada is often too hard. There are significant financial, health, and mental health costs to unsupported care. Our recent National Caregiving Survey revealed that a quarter of caregivers are struggling with their mental health. Nearly 50% are struggling with exhaustion and with feeling overwhelmed, and 94% say they need better access to home care services. Nearly 2/3 of caregivers are working an extra shift, juggling the responsibilities of work and care, and balancing an untenable average of 30 hours of care a week on top of their paid employment. As one caregiver told me recently, it's 24/7. I'm beyond burnt out, but I have to keep going. Mom needs care. I think we can all relate to that. Our paid care workforce, care providers like personal support workers, disability support professionals, and home health aides are also under immense strain. Workforce shortages mean that families cannot find qualified skilled care providers and can't access respite care. Care providers are leaving the field at an alarming rate. Our survey found that 80% have considered changing careers in the last year, citing low compensation, inadequate staffing, and lack of safety at work. Some care agencies have reported 50% turnover of their staff each year. Care providers do the intimate and often backbreaking work that keeps families going. When my mother was ill, it was her PSW team who provided her with relief and with sensitive care. They also taught me and my siblings how to carefully lift her, bathe her, and administer pain medication. We've heard from thousands of care providers from coast to coast to coast who do this work because it is a calling. Gretchen Mayer, please stand, Gretchen, who is here with us today, is one of them. I'd just like to acknowledge Gretchen. As Canadian sociologist Pat Armstrong reminds us, the conditions of work are the conditions of care, and the undervaluing of paid and unpaid care roles has led to a country in silent crisis. The crisis of care hurts us all. As Canadians, we are worse off by almost $1 billion annually in lost productivity and 500,000 FTEs. People have to make the tough choices to work less or not at all to support the people they love. But it doesn't have to be this way. The problem is not that people need care. Rather, the problem is that caregivers and care providers are insufficiently supported to care for the people in their lives. Our current and future prosperity depends on supporting caregivers and care providers. Better is possible. We need effective and visionary public policy to make sure that caregivers and care providers get the help that they need. We were very happy to see this recognized with a clear federal commitment to a national caregiving strategy in Budget 2024. We're so pleased that Minister O'Regan, a champion for caregiving with lived experience as a caregiver himself, will be leading the development of the strategy. We have an opportunity to build care security in Canada, and I know we are all eager to hear about the Government of Canada's plans to make Canada the best place in the world to give and receive care. First, some important introductions. It's my pleasure to introduce this afternoon's speakers. Tanya Van Biesen will be leading the discussion following Minister O'Regan's address. Tanya is the President and CEO of VersaFit, and as of today, as of this morning, the President of the Canadian Club of Toronto. Congratulations to Tanya. Prior to joining Versify, Tanya led the Canadian Club Board and the Canadian Board and CEO practice for a global human capital firm, where she focused on advancing corporate clients with their most important leadership decisions. A passionate advocate for gender equity as a driver of economic growth and progress, Tanya is a sought-after speaker, thought leader, and architect of change. And now to the main event. The Honourable Seamus O'Regan, Jr. is Canada's Minister of Labour and Seniors. He was first elected as the Member of Parliament for St. John's South, Mount Pearl, in 2015. He's held a number of cabinet portfolios as Minister of Labour, Minister of Natural Resources, Minister of Indigenous Services, Minister of Veterans Affairs, and Associate Minister of National Defence. He's also well known to Canadians and to many of us in this room for his 10 years as co-host of CTV's Canada AM. A proud Newfoundlander, Minister O'Regan held a number of senior roles in the government of his home province. As I said before, he is also a caregiver. Minister O'Regan, the Canadian Club podium is yours.
Thank you all. What a room. Thank you, Liv. I want to, from the bottom of my heart, thank the Canadian Centre for Caregiving Excellence for getting me out of question period today. I cannot. You have no idea. You only see what's on TV, trust me. But look, there's a lot of busy people in this room, and many of us can barely find the time of day to eat a proper lunch on the best of days. You've managed to free up some time for a good meal, and I think for a very important discussion. So thank you all for being here. Thank you. Really, yes, round of applause, please. I am, quite sincerely, to have a room sold out to talk about the care economy is a really good sign. And also kudos to the Canadian Club. We've been having important discussions and debates around this podium in this country for well over a century. I call this a historic podium of record, because this is where we come together to take on the issues of the day and grapple and deliberate on some tough questions. Because at its heart, good public policy requires us all to listen to one another, and that can get messy and it can get tense. It case in point, the House of Commons. But at the end of the day, it's what so often leads to this great compromise that we call Canada. So thank you for including me in that tradition. Now, given the topic of today's speech, I think it bears explaining why is it that the Federal Minister of Labour and Minister for Seniors is here to talk about the care economy. Because I am not the Minister of Health, I am not the Minister of Finance, I am not the Minister responsible for immigration or housing or childcare or women's issues. But the care economy is why I have come before all of you here today. Just a few years ago, when I was Natural Resources Minister, our world was a very different place. We were in the middle of a global pandemic and in the heat of a global oil price war. Barrels of oil hitting negative $35, negative 35. I didn't even know that could exist. I had to call the energy ministers of Alberta and Saskatchewan, wake them bright and early to that news. I mean, this is Canada's biggest industry. I'll never forget it. Those were very anxious times for oil and gas workers, for mining workers, and they felt that anxiety, every high and low, every bump and bruise. We spent a lot of time listening to them back then. I still do. They're my constituents. You listen, you take advice, you act. That is the only way to get big things in this country done. Those workers told us where we needed to be headed, and they told us that they felt that they were being left behind, that they weren't being listened to as the industries changed around them, as the world changed around them. And I would bring what they would tell me to the cabinet table every week to see what we could do to help. So when the Prime Minister decided to make me Labour Minister, he said I talked myself into a job. And it all made sense, because many workers across the country needed much of the same thing. They needed to hear what we had been telling energy workers in Alberta and Saskatchewan and Newfoundland and Labrador, that they will have a say in the future, that there will be good jobs that they can count on, and that they will have the dignity of their work. And we've gotten a lot done in my time at Labour. 10 paid sick days for workers in federally regulated industries. Passed unanimously in the House of Commons, to give all of my colleagues credit. Passed unanimously. We've made massive investments in skills training. We've got historic legislation to ban replacement workers during strikes and lockouts. Ban. Something that the Labour movement has been asking for longer than Canada has been a country, and I am proud to say that too passed unanimously. Unanimously. Which means I had to be really nice to a lot of people, and that is not easy. But I am relentlessly nice. It's true. It's a weapon. We also created a union-led advisory table, and I think that that's really important. It gets to the root of what I was talking about earlier. So workers don't literally just have a seat at the table, they will lead the table. Last year, the Prime Minister asked me to also serve as Minister of Seniors. Some weren't so sure about that. Labour leaders said that I wouldn't have the time to focus on their priorities. Seniors and care workers said the same. But you know, from my point of view at the cabinet table, the unique place between those two portfolios, that's why I'm here to talk to you today. We find ourselves at a critical moment in our history, one that finds itself right at the intersection of the needs of Canadian workers, seniors, and the most vulnerable in our society. And listen, while there are many positive indicators in our economy right now, we have a lot of issues to tackle. Our productivity challenges are long-standing. Birth rates are declining. Labor shortages are a sticky issue, and our senior population is growing every day. Now, some of these trends were part of the economic hangover from COVID. Some have been building for a long time. But all of them converge in the care economy. The care economy is healthcare. The care economy is childcare. The care economy is seniors care. The care economy is disability care. It's in our homes, our community centers, our long-term care facilities. It's paid work and it's unpaid work. The care economy is the one sector of our economy that every other sector relies on. It's the foundation of our entire economy. Think about that. And it's a foundation built upon a very simple principle. Caring is one of the most basic things that we do as human beings. And in an uncertain world, few things are more certain than our need to care for each other. With the labor shortages we have, a growing senior population, declining birth rates, the fact of the matter is no economic growth or increase in productivity will be possible if we don't support care workers and caregivers. Won't. Because they do the work that lets us all go to work. We can't just let people go it alone. No matter the circumstance or the state of the economy, there will always be a need for care. It is essential to the functioning of our society. But just because care is essential doesn't mean that the dignity of it is guaranteed. So much of my work in politics has been about dignity. Dignity for veterans, dignity for Indigenous peoples, dignity for workers like those energy workers in my province, anxious about their futures at the height of the pandemic. Care workers and caregivers deserve dignity too. The dignity of being seen and recognized for what they are. Not just to be told that they are heroes or special, but to be recognized as critical to the very foundation of our economy, because we don't have enough care workers. You know that. And we are losing more of the ones that we do have. With every care worker that leaves the workforce, another one of our loved ones has to give up a job or a promotion, and their family is pushed to give up a paycheck. Also, they can give the care that we need. That's where we stand. May sound dramatic to some. It's an everyday reality for far too many. We are in a care crisis in this country. Dignity is the purpose of these jobs, to help people live their lives with dignity. And care workers deserve no less than that same dignity that they work so hard to give others every day. It shouldn't matter whether you put on scrubs or coveralls to do your job. People deserve dignity in their work, jobs that they are proud to do. And it is our job as governments, as industry, as a society, to give them the dignity that they deserve. We relied on them during the pandemic. After all they did, and all they are still doing to this day, now is the time to be there for them. But the way it is, poor pay, poor conditions, working multiple jobs to make ends meet. And that's what the rest of us witnessed as we began to wake up to the realities of this work in the early months of COVID. But this has always been the experience of care workers. It was the experience for care workers before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and unfortunately still after the pandemic. Because the conditions of work are the conditions of care. If we don't give care workers the support they need, the care that we receive will never be what it should be. It's pretty simple. You get out what you put in. We saw the worst of this during COVID in our long-term care facilities. But this wasn't just the reality for those who are working in long-term care or even in paid care. COVID has been tough on the sandwich generation too, and it has not let up since. And they're the generation who are caring for both their children and their parents or their grandparents or aunties and uncles, and they are often leaving themselves a step behind financially. That is the reality of caregiving. You know, people don't just magically appear in the labor market. We only get to work when we're healthy, and we won't go to work if our loved ones need care. Because care can be done by families, it can be done by the market, it can be done by the state. But every one of those, every kind of care, comes at a cost. And the issue is personal for many of us because these people are so many of us. They are the 1 in 5 workers in this country who go to work every day to care for others. 1 in 5. And the 1 in 2 Canadians who will become a caregiver at some point in their life. Half of us. Half of us. I mean, I got my phone there, and rudely I have it turned up. It's in case the phone goes off from my mom. If God forbid something happens to Mom right now in St. John's, I'm the first one to get the call. I'm number 1 on her lifeline. She's in St. John's. I could be anywhere. But most caregivers don't look like me or have the resources I have. The care economy is built on the backs of female workers. Typically middle-aged, overwhelmingly racialized, and oftentimes coming from the most vulnerable segments of our society. These are the people who take care of our children, our parents, and our most vulnerable. They are specialized workers that train on the job and at universities and colleges in order to reach their professional designations. It is complex, demanding work that is so often underpaid and so regularly undervalued. And they do it all to deliver on that simple human purpose of caring for one another. Everything that we talk about here, everything that we try to get done in our downtown office tower boardrooms, it all depends on care workers and caregivers doing well. The care economy makes up 13% of our GDP. But we lose $1.3 billion in productivity every year because of unpaid caregiving. Missed work days, job opportunities turned down, wages lost, all because care needed to happen. Care workers are highly skilled professionals. As I said, they train for years to get to where they are, like so many of us in this room and around this town. And they rightly expect that the jobs that they'll get will be well-paying jobs that can support a family, the types of jobs that drive economies and build prosperity. And it is my firm belief that we can keep that expectation alive in this country. I don't need to explain to this room why good middle-class jobs in rapidly growing sectors are good for the economy. Jobs that grow our labor pool, boost productivity, put paychecks in bank accounts, and drive the demand that help businesses grow. I don't need to make that argument. But in the care economy, it does. It does take that argument. And it all requires our support. The support of governments who see where the puck is going. Supporting caregivers can mean programs and services that lend a hand to parents so families don't have to struggle to make care happen. Programs like National $10 a day childcare, which is helping parents, especially mothers, today stay in their careers or get back to them. It's working. It's working. It's working already. Our national child care program has seen us hit record high numbers of women participating in the workforce. Over 85% right now, including 80% of mothers with kids under 6. So this is happening, and this is why. Support can also mean direct supports to workers with things like wages and workplace standards. Things like our $200 billion healthcare deals with the provinces and territories, and our plan to give personal support workers a well-deserved raise so no PSW is making less than $25 an hour. But at its best, Supporting caregivers means more than any of this. It means recognizing the value of their work, her work, across the entire economy. So in this year's budget, we announced that we will be creating a national caregiving strategy to think big on the future of care. And we're starting up a new sectoral table on the care economy to listen to the experts in this space on what we can do to tackle the care crisis today. It is all about listening to the people who know best, the workers. So caregivers have what they need to be at their very best. I have seen what tables like this can do for workers. I mean, if you just look at the table that we use to help develop our national child care program, and what we're doing right now with the union-led advisory table, who I'm going to be meeting with again next week on issues like automation and AI and energy. Goal is simple. Listen to the experts. Listen to the people who do the work, the people who know the value of the work and the value of these important jobs, the value of care. And I can tell you all right now that we are going to be announcing the leadership of that new sectoral table on the care economy very soon. Very soon. Kind of hoping I'd have it done by now, but you know Ottawa. But watch this space. Before I got into politics, I worked in the provincial government way back. I used to write speeches for Premier Brian Tobin back in the day during Hibernia First Oil. We didn't have a clue what we were doing, by the way. Not a clue. But we knew what we had. It was a monumental time for Newfoundland and Labrador in the wake of one of the greatest global ecological disasters, and certainly the biggest one to hit Newfoundland, the collapse of the cod fishery. And we didn't know what we'd do. And then along came oil. It was a monumental time for us, for my province, for working families. And I saw what those jobs did for my province back then in the 90s. Good, well-paying jobs that put food on the table and brought home prosperity. It was a game changer. But good, well-paying jobs don't just have to include a hard hat. The industries that build the middle class and make business boom don't have to be dominated by men. The care economy has built and can build these good jobs to tackle the issues that we face and to meet the needs of our 21st century economy. Building a new middle class backed by these good jobs and their unique purpose to deliver dignity to others. People have always aged. People have always gotten older. People have always gotten sick. And our children have always needed care. We are not the first ones to wrestle with these big issues. But we can be the first ones to truly meet them all head on, allowing everyone the opportunity to prosper in life, to care for one another, to be good to one another, to believe and invest in our workers and in their valuable ability to do one of the simplest and most important things that a person can do: care. Care. I hope I've given you something to think about. And I look forward to your questions. Thank you so much for this privilege. I appreciate it. Thank you. You need to sit over there? Yeah.
Normally, I would start by cracking some jokes, but
Oh, no, crack the jokes.
I've had so many questions
Oh, okay.
delivered to me that we are on a tight timeline.
Okay, okay.
Okay. So, first of all, thank you, Minister,
Thank you for having
for laying out the case. And I know that there's still lots of work ahead in terms of the work that you and your ministry and the government's going to do. And I think so many of us are here in this room for a couple of reasons.
Just gonna grab some water. Keep talking.
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
And I will credit this to my friend Jake for framing this out, which I think is great. We are here as humans. We have either been cared for, not either, we have been cared for,
Yeah.
and we are or will care for others as our life progresses. So this matters to all of us. It needs to matter to all of us. But as you can imagine, in a downtown Toronto environment, we are also interested in how we pay for this.
Yeah.
and how this does actually link to economic growth, our waning productivity, which is, we are all and should be obsessed with right now. So can you pull the strings for us? Can you bring that together?
Yeah, I mean, I think I described some of the things that we're doing, and these are very much initial stages. But, and it sounds like, oh, a table, my gosh, as if we need another table or more consultation. But if you really want to take these things seriously, these are, vitally important things to do. And, there have been many people, and I know there are many people in this room who have been advocates for what we now call the care economy, and who understand those connections very well, who are probably saying about time. But, COVID really did illuminate a lot of us. And, I've said to groups before, and they've heard me, we are, by the way, not over COVID. We are in no way over COVID. Mentally, psychologically, and I honestly think that if we don't get our heads around why we are suffering this perpetual angst, not only as a country, but I think as a world right now, we aren't going to be able to solve a lot of other problems. We really have to come to face that fact. That is what we're going through. We have a great saying in Newfoundland called, "My nerves are rub raw." Our nerves are rub raw. Inflation, interest rates, all of it, just all of that post-pandemic, we're not over it. But on the upside, there is no country in the world that did better than we did in recovering from this pandemic. None. On any level. And so I think governments are somewhat reticent to go back and do like, okay, what did we do right and what did we do wrong? Because we're just going to really concentrate on the wrong. But it's too bad. I would like to dig deeper, and I think we will get there in time. We're also all busy kind of recovering and concentrating on recovery rather than looking back, and that's commendable to us as a country. But we cannot forget what was exposed. How workers were being treated, particularly care workers in long-term care facilities. Childcare. We saw a lot of it, particularly, I think, in long-term care in those early months when we were, looking at seniors and looking at seniors' homes in every province and territory. So we've got a spark of momentum now. We realize and appreciate the need, and it is a very much a provincial and territorial jurisdiction. I'm very cognizant of that. I started in provincial government, so I began many of my meetings as a minister when I talk to my provincial and territorial colleagues saying, I know my lane, I know my lane, I know my lane, but we're a country the size of California. Can we not talk to one another and solve some problems? Because we, as a federal government, think it's a priority. We're willing to put a little bit of money into this, working with you, because it is your turf, and let's see what we can get done, So we are in early stages. I think that we've recognized that now we want to build a strategy for the long term, and in the short term, we are building a sectoral table. Again, the leadership of that I will be announcing very, very soon, that are going to look at what we can do in the short term and medium term to address some of these things. And I say in the short term, I mean in the next few months, what can we do? The demand is real. It is time to act.
I'm glad you touched on the provincial versus federal jurisdiction. We are the great balkanizers. So tell us a bit about your strategy to engage the provinces, to bring them in, because so much of this will be delivered through the provinces.
Yeah, and I mean, it's, balkanization sometimes is a negative term, but on the upside, we learned from childcare from Quebec. Saskatchewan gave birth to Medicare. So, the beauty of federalism when it works is that, each province and territory sometimes takes a chance on how things are done, and the rest of us can all learn from it. And I know that, as a guy who grew up, was born in Newfoundland but grew up in Labrador, don't get me going about the differences between Newfoundland and Labrador. And no joke, they're very different places with very different histories. So even though I know a lot of people are, when they have to say it again and again, are probably slightly annoyed by the number of syllables in my province, trust me, it's worth the effort. They are two very different places, and I'm one of the few Newfoundlanders and a Labradorian who you will ever meet, because I grew up in both. So the upside is that we can learn from one another in these things. The downside is sometimes we just, we let stuff get in the way. And I worked particularly hard in my role as Natural Resources Minister, which, as you well know, can be quite
tense when it comes to jurisdictional disputes over energy and climate change and how we control emissions. But you really, really do have to work together because each has a very legitimate space in this argument, and it's something that directly affects all of us, you know, particularly on climate change. I mean, Toronto crowds don't know this as well as St. John's crowds or Calgary or Edmonton crowds. We are the 4th biggest producers of oil and gas in the world. Like, the economy doesn't function without it. It's not something you turn off. It is imbued and leads our economy. So, you know, I told a lot of, a quick story, but when I started in natural resources, they told me, oh, well, and they told my husband, they said, you'll never see him. He's gonna be on the road all the time. He travels more than the Foreign Affairs Minister. The Natural Resources Minister is all over the world promoting Canadian energy. The pandemic hit, I didn't leave the kitchen. And the problem is
much to your husband's chagrin.
Much to his chagrin. About month 8, he was like, where is the... There's no payoff here. And it was tough because then you're doing the conferences in Abu Dhabi and in Berlin and on, you know, every given day, so you're not sleeping either. This is an issue that is so important, and it's hard work, cooperative federalism, but we got to get busy at it. We're not a big enough country to balkanize, but it takes work. It takes hard work by all sides.
We've got great representation in the room today from labor, so a mixture of labor and business in the room today, and I wonder, what challenge would you put to both the labor movement and the, you know, the broader corporate sector on this issue of the care economy?
There's a great tradition that many people probably aren't aware of in this country of tripartitism. You know, we're not quite as far as the German corporate culture, where they have, you know, unions sit in some cases by law on their boards of directors and that sort of thing. But on big issues in this country, we have a strong history of unions and employers sitting down together and trying to hash stuff out. And it's really important that we do it that way. So I think the first thing that, you know, both sides have to do, and, you know, we get it right 96% of the time. I have an incredible team at the Labor Ministry that I inherited and that will live long past me, where 96% of labor disputes are solved without a work stoppage or a strike or a lockout of any sort. They're really good at bringing people together. And one of the ways they do that is just to remind people in the heat of battle that we're all in this together and that each side has a legitimate voice. That when unions sometimes look at employers as the enemy, they are legitimate. That is a legitimate voice, and the same works the other way. Unions are legitimate voices. It comes back to dignity. It is recognizing the dignity of each other's place, of each other's voice. That will carry you far. That is probably not as granularly prescriptive as you were looking for, but if you can begin in that space, you would be surprised how much you can get done.
I hope that over time you will have a call to action for all of us, because again, we are all implicated here, whether it's professionally or personally, so we look forward to that. I'm going to get to some audience questions.
Yeah, sure.
So a couple of related questions around aging. Thank you for the EI caregiver benefit. Carers for a child receive 35 weeks pay leave. Carers for critically ill elders get 15 weeks.
Yeah.
Why the discrepancy?
We got to do better on that. You know, no question. I'm, as I said, caregiver for my mom. I'm not complaining. My issue is just that I'm not in the same city as she is. And I have a cadre of very good cousins who help me out. But it's an issue. We just celebrated her 80th birthday, and she's doing amazing, and which in some ways makes me want to be with her even more right now. Because, you know, she's 80, and it doesn't always get better. It sometimes gets tougher. But the number of people, friends of mine, who have given up job opportunities to move elsewhere, to go elsewhere, people who have been able to accept promotions or have to take on extra jobs. I know these people. These are my friends. I'm a 53-year-old man. I'm I know it and I get it. So I think, we got to see some changes there, no question. And also, although she just passed away during COVID, but my mother-in-law lived with us as well for 10 years, both here in Toronto and then when we moved to St. John's. And I know you're thinking, my God, he's a saint living with his mother-in-law. It's a beautiful thing. She only spoke Greek.
So you think?
And not much, well, a little more English than she let on, I quickly learned. So I'd still have to be very careful about what I said. But my husband's Greek. Greek is his first language, French his second, English his third, and I'm proud to say he's caught on to some Newfoundlandese, which is amazing. Very proud of him. All the new words he picked up living in Newfoundland, he says with a Newfoundland accent. It's really quite lovely. Yeah, but we looked after her and in the house, and to be honest, she looked after us too. Sometimes it can work out to be a beautiful thing, but more, I'm afraid to say that for a lot, it isn't. It's hard. It's really hard. We gotta lighten that load.
Bit of a different question here from, I don't know who asked it, but it's from the perspective of a younger person thinking about going into a caregiving field. And there are college and university-based programs that enable that to happen. But what would it take for levels of government to fund paid placements for students to work in long-term care, in shelters, in hospices, et cetera?
That's an excellent idea, and I think that's probably one of the ideas that'll come up at the table. And then a lot of people nodding their heads because this is old news to them. This is the sort of thing that we got to look into. We have to entice talent. We're experiencing one of the biggest labor shortages that the country has ever experienced. I mean, for those people, my mother's a nurse, was a nurse, and she was a nursing instructor, and 12-hour shifts in the middle of the night. I was a latchkey kid. I've seen what she did at a time when women's work in the care economy was in no way valued back in the 70s and 80s and after. But she did it because she loved it. Loving it is great. I want to make sure that you are properly compensated for it because we need good people in this part of our economy that is the absolute, as I said, is the absolute foundation for the rest of it. Whether it's childcare or care for your parents or your grandparents, there are people I know in this room who probably wouldn't be able to be here if it wasn't for care. Curious, how many people here are a caregiver? It's a lot of hands, right? And for the rest of you, someday you may be. Yep. So that is why this issue is so important and why I am so grateful that you guys had me here today to talk about this, because we all need to be talking about this, because the people that we are talking about are us.
We had a little bit of a spicy lunch, so I'm going to get a bit spicy with you. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the labor part of your file.
Yeah.
The looming rail strike.
Yeah.
How should we be thinking about that? Because that could be very disruptive to our economy.
Yeah, we just got to make sure it's not disruptive. Again, great faith in our teams who are at the table with them right now. They are 96% of the time they get it done. It's just that I don't want this one caught up in the 4%. Rail is the economic backbone of this country. I learned that as Natural Resources Minister. What I did, so you have one union, Teamsters, and you have two rail companies that dominate the market in Canada, and the negotiations are happening at the same time, and they're coming to a head at the same time. So, which is kind of the way it worked out, but it's also unfortunate. The timing is not great, If both went at the same time, yeah, there would be significant and immediate problems. What I went back to the Canada Industrial Review Board with is I said, I'd like to ensure that we have a good maintenance of activities agreement, which basically means if there's a strike and a lockout, what's absolutely essential? Because we got letters from lots of people. Very important. When, you know, in the Association of Chlorine Distributors and Producers, I can't remember their exact name, but chlorine people, as in municipal water, when they have a problem getting chlorine to communities, we all got a problem. We all got a big problem. Propane. Okay, propane. It is the backup power for long-term care facilities in a lot of rural Canada. So you're talking seniors going without power. Not something I want to see happen. And we were deluged with letters and started piling on a bit then. It was fast fashion. We're like, hey, look, in a month's time, what we're selling will be out of style. Some are more important than others. Some are more essential than others. But the CIRB is going to take a very close look at that now. And when I don't tell them what to do, I can make a request, but they took me up on this one and they said, yeah, we need to take a very close look at what is essential, what's not essential. So this will probably go into July, maybe August, I don't know. I don't know whether they'll be holding public hearings on it or not. That is completely up to them. But they do incredible work, and you know, look, I don't need to be reminded. Last summer, people were asking me if I had any plans for the summer. I went no, because I learned last year, having spent 2 weeks unexpectedly in Vancouver with the longshoremen and BC Ports. It was like, okay, they're staring out from my hotel window at one of our most important ports and harbors, not moving. Nothing moving. There's nothing that quite focuses the mind as that. And it took too long. 2 weeks is too long. So I wasn't interested in just getting the deal. I was interested in doing what is happening now, which is an industrial inquiry commission to find out fundamentally why couldn't these parties reach an agreement. Because in effect, what we've done is we've taken supply chains, whether it be rail or our ports or our airports, we've taken supply chains, and rightly we privatize them, right? Because I mean, that's where you're going to get investment, and it's better in the hands of the private sector. But suddenly, when there's a work stoppage, because workers are asking for more, or the threat of a work stoppage, I should say, everybody, or not everybody, generally business comes crying to government to solve the problem. In other words, to put in back-to-work legislation. And I won't. And in fact, for the record, not one single political party last summer asked me to put forward back-to-work legislation. The deal is at the table. You're all mature actors that we have entrusted our supply chains in this country to. Do the goddamn deal. The deal is right in front of you. Do the deal. That's what I say to them. And I will say the same here at Rail. Do the deal. The deal is there. It is there to be had. It is right in front of you. You should not need government intervention. You tell me the market's best? You tell me the table's where the problems are solved? Do the deal. So we'll see. We'll see. And I mean, it's just important for this room and for those people who are listening that you know where I stand, although I've proven it on many occasions. But it's also important that you know that we have an incredible team at the Labor Department, an incredible team who just operate next level on this sort of stuff and have a 96% success rate, and they are on this.
So I hear no summer of strikes. I'm kidding, that's not what you said, but I'm sending hope out into the universe.
Look, no, at the end of the day, the other thing I would say is nobody wants one either. You know, employers don't want one, unions don't want one. No one wants to go on strike.
This
they don't.
economy does not want one.
No, and these are all men and women who live in this economy, who understand this. You know, there are so many amazingly smart and good people who I continue to meet on both sides of this table and who ultimately get the deal done. They really do. So I choose to have faith because they've proven that faith many times.
Minister, thank you so much. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for putting these ideas out to us for consideration. We're going to invite up Jay Kirsch-Allen to do the closing remarks.
Okay. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thanks, Jay. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jake Hirsch-Allen, and I'm a former director as of this morning of the Canadian Club of Toronto. And I'm here to offer thanks. Minister O'Regan, on behalf of the Canadian Club of Toronto, we wish to thank you for delivering an inspiring address on the challenges and opportunities that the care economy faces. One thing that has become clear from not just every presentation today, but I hope has become clear in each of your hearts as well, is that this is an issue that literally affects everyone and should affect us on a daily basis. It should be the top of our priority list. So 4 quick hits on why this is personally important, all the way up to our country. My parents are aging, and I'm scared. I've been scared since I was a kid of them aging. And yet, only as an adult am I beginning to see the evidence of a path where they don't age and die with dignity. And our minister today painted a different picture, but one that's actually going to take all of us working on it together, prioritizing it above other things. My wife helped found a company called Sparrow that matches young people to old people so that those who have extra bedrooms, we have more bedrooms available in this country than we have homeless people, can offer them to those who can support them, who can care for them. And during COVID, when the minister came to our podium online, of course, he and I had a conversation about addiction, and that was in a presentation about disability. Every one of us either now has or will have a disability, and that means every one of us is going to need to be cared for. And finally, these days, most of what I talk about is about as far from the care economy as one can get. It's the federal government spending on artificial intelligence. And yet there's a really smart president of an American university who talked about the link between those two things. And that's because we actually have to be prioritizing in an age where things are automated more and more and more, where our economy gets faster and faster and faster, where we are distracted by the shiny toys of AI. We have to be prioritizing the things that are closer to our heart. And it's really hard to do that. Every day, I am distracted by my phone from the people that I love, by other challenges in the economy and the globe, from my community and the people that surround me. And so I want to follow the minister's words, and I want to act on those words in supporting him and this strategy to make the care economy the center of Canada's economy. We were reassured by your compassion and your conviction. Your plans for growing the care economy and supporting its workers are essential. We wish you success in these efforts, and to those of your allies in this room. I want to thank Tanya for navigating engaging questions, including some spicy ones. We wish you luck as you take over as president of our club. We have 2 more events coming up this season as we conclude a very busy June. Thank you to our staff. On June 17th, we'll have our annual Pride Evening event. That's Monday, if I remember correctly, featuring a conversation with Rainbow Railroad leaders on the state of LGBTQ+ persecution around the world. We end our season on June 19th with an event featuring Jeremy Wilmot, the CEO of Interac. One more thank you to the Canadian Centre for Caregiving Excellence for their sponsorship. And let me conclude by thanking our AV supplier one last time, VVC Live, for its consistently reliable event support. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy the rest of the day. We hope to see you next week.